We're picking up a game in the middle of the game here. Okay, as you can see, all of the elf cards and undead cards have our actual artwork in the game. So this was the artwork that will appear in the game on the cards. We're picking it up mid-game. You can see the undead did a couple damage early on to the elf castle, but I'm beginning to push back, and I've got a good turn in store here. So I'm going to start my turn with the action phase. So you get to play up to 6 levels of cards. So I will start with a lightning bolt, which is a level 3 spell. That I will do 2 damage to the ghost that is at this space.
Okay, so that will eliminate my ghost.
And my druid's ability is after you cast a spell, you may place a level 1 or 2 creature here instead of at your castle. So I will deploy a hunter there, right with my druid. So the druid will summon a hunter there. That is a level 1 creature. So I have spent 4 of my mana this turn, so I will spend the final 2 mana by playing a hunter and a dryad at my castle. So I have spent all 6 of my mana, so now we are at the battle phase. Since we both have creatures at this space, we now do battle. Battle is really simple. We first do before combat abilities, which the hunter has a before combat ability to apply its damage before combat, so it is a first strike ability. So the hunter will deal its 1 damage before the combat actually starts.
Okay, so that will eliminate one of my skeletons because it has 1 life, 1 hit point.
So now we enter the battle phase. There are no during combat abilities with these creatures, and so I total up my attack, which would be 1 because the hunter has already applied his damage. The druid has 1 attack.
Okay, and my skeleton has 1 attack to return to either the druid or the hunter, depending on the choice there.
So we each take 1 damage here. I will choose to place the 1 damage on my druid, which since it has 2 hit points, and so the druid is wounded.
Okay, and the 1 damage is enough to eliminate my skeleton, so I will remove it from play.
Alright, that was it for the battle phase, and now the battle phase is over. All of my creatures move. Now when you move, you're moving left to right, or you're moving away from your castle, your home castle, towards the enemy castle, and your creatures will move according to their movement value on their card. You'll see the unicorns and the hunters have movement 2, tree ants and dryads and druids all have movement 1. So we'll start with moving these creatures. They will move forward. Now even though the hunter has 2 movement, he will have to stop here because they're enemy creatures. Now if a creature has flying, it actually can move past enemy creatures if it chooses to. So those move. The unicorn and the hunter both move 2, so they'll move up 2 spaces to here. The tree ant will move forward a space. This dryad moves forward a space, and this hunter has movement 2, so he moves forward 2 spaces. Now my movement phase is over, and I am to the draw phase. I currently have 2 cards in my hand, so I draw back up to 6 cards, and my turn is over.
Okay, so for my turn, I will play for my first spell points or mana points. I will play an Entangle card, which will reduce the attack of an enemy creature to 0. So I'm going to choose to reduce the attack of the druid to 0 with this Entangle card. And then I will play another Entangle card to reduce one of the hunter's attack to 0. And for my final 2 mana, I will lay down a skeleton and a ghoul at my castle. So now that will take us to the battle phase where before combat, my ghost will have the ability to reduce the attack of a level 1 or level 2 creature to 0. So I will choose to reduce the attack of the other hunter to 0 with my ghost. So that eliminates all of my before combat abilities.
Yeah, so one thing to note, the hunters also have a before combat ability, but since it is his turn, his before combat abilities go before mine. So he reduced a hunter to 0. That hunter is no longer able to apply his combat damage. And with his 2 entangles, now I have 3 creatures that have 0 attack there. Now one thing to notice is that he casts the entangle spell. He would have normally targeted the unicorn here because it has the highest attack value, but unicorns are completely immune to enemy spells and abilities.
Okay, so now once we've gotten through all of the before combat stuff, we will do normal combat abilities and add up attack damage and so on. So my ghost and my ghoul together have an attack value of 2.
My total attack value will be 2 as well from the unicorn, since the 2 hunters and the druid were all reduced to 0.
So for my 2 damage, I will apply 1 to the ghoul, and I will apply both to the ghoul so that I can maintain my ghost. The entangle spells will leave the board. Now combat is over after you take your 2 damage.
Oh, right. I take 2 damage, which I will put both on the unicorn since it has 2 hit points.
And then I will move the skeleton and the ghoul each 1 space according to their movement value for my castle. And I will draw 4 cards to return my hand to 6 and end my turn.
Now, one thing we forgot to mention is that the decks we are playing are the, obviously the elves is what I am playing, but it is mixed with the air deck, which is specialized in movement and mobility, making your units quicker moving across the battlefield. He's playing the Earth Undead, which the Earth deck is specializing in life and survivability. So we're about to showcase that here on my turn. I'll do another turn during my action step. You start the turn, so casting spells, playing creatures. I'm going to play the Tempest spell. Now, the Tempest spell is the most powerful spell in the air deck. This allows me to immediately move all friendly creatures as if it were the movement step. In addition to that, I'm going to play the Haste spell on my Treant. So now the Treant has 2 movement. So now that all my creatures immediately move, this Hunter and this Treant, being with 2 movement each, will now move up into this combat. And this Dryad will move forward. I have 1 more mana to spend, so I'll place a Dryad. In fact, actually, since my Druid allows me to play creatures at that space when I cast a spell, I will play the Dryad at this space. So now you're beginning to see how you can really build momentum if you play your cards correctly. I just stacked up quite a few creatures at this space in front of his castle. So my action step is over. Now we go to the battle step. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we, again, both have before combat abilities, but since it is my turn now, the 3 hunters are going to apply their 3 damage before combat, before his ghost is able to reduce damage.
Okay, so with his 3 damage that I must apply to my creatures before combat, I will apply 1 to the skeleton, which will remove it from play, and I will apply the other 2 to my ghoul, so that I can still use my ghost's ability to reduce the attack of one of his creatures to 0. In this case, I'm going to choose his Dryad because of the Dryad's ability, which increases its attack value by 1 for each different creature type that my opponent has at this space. So that would reduce it from 5 to 0.
Okay, now that all before combat is done, we go into the battle phase. The Dryad has 0 attack, so I'm just going to move it out of here. The Hunters have already applied their attack, so I'm going to move them out as well. The total of the Treant, Unicorn, and Druid is 5 damage. Okay. His Ghost applies 1 damage back to me, and I will put that damage on the Treant since it has 7 hit points.
Okay, and I will remove my Ghost.
Now that the combat is over, all of my creatures move, and this is really bad for him because all 7 creatures are going to move to the castle. Now, castle combat is each creature here, regardless of its attack value, will apply 1 damage to the castle. So I'm about to apply 7 damage to the castle. The castle only has 5 hit points, so I've just won the game. Obviously, what you can see is level 4 spells, the way you cast your spells, the way you move your creatures around, things can shift very quickly depending on how you play your cards and when you play your cards.